When we wake up in the morning, we begin a long day of decision making. What shall I eat for breakfast? What shall I eat for lunch? What shall I eat for dinner? What shall I drink? Tea? Coffee? What should I wear? Should it be formal or casual? Where should I go? Should I go to work? To school? Should I go shopping? What should I see? A movie? The park? Who should I talk to? My friends? My boss? Life is a series of endless decisions. Most people on earth believe they are perfectly free to make the decisions that they think are best for them. But some people who are known as determinists believe that humans are simply a collection of atoms and electrons that are completely controlled by the physical forces of nature. Sam Harris, a best-selling author and debater, is one of these determinists. He has written a thought-provoking book on the subject, appropriately titled Free Will, in which he compares humans to string puppets. He believes that every thought we think, every word we utter, every movement we make is controlled by the unthinking, impersonal, random forces of nature. Is he right? Let's look at some of the evidence. Hello, my name is Jake and I am a puppet. Everything I do is controlled by this man up above me. He pulls my strings to make my arms wave and makes my head bob, makes my mouth move. Everything I do is controlled by this guy. Don't get me wrong, I'm very thankful for the voice you've given me. All the other lady puppets seem to find it most irresistible. But I would like some of my own freedom. Is that too much to ask? I'd like to be able to wave my arms when I felt like waving my arms and nod my head when I feel like nodding my head. We would like to be more like you humans and be able to make our own decisions. Is that too much to ask? That's what I would like, but I'm afraid I will always be a puppet. If Mr. Harris and the determinists are correct, we are all like Jake the puppet. Unlike his strings, the strings that control us are invisible, but nevertheless, they are controlling our every move, our every word, our every thought. According to this view, the universe is like a giant machine. The atoms and electrons are the components of this machine, and all the components are connected together by the various physical forces. Determinists believe that a human is nothing more than a structure built of atoms, and that these atoms are controlled by the same forces that control all other atoms. This includes our minds as well as our bodies. Another way to illustrate determinism is to think of a row of falling dominoes. One physical event causes a second, which in turn causes a third, and so on. The reason you fell in love or why you have the job you do can be traced back through a string of physical events to the beginning of time. Everything in your life is just a matter of luck. If this view were correct, it would have staggering implications concerning our lives, our ethics, our politics, our religion. It would even call into question our value as humans. Let's take a closer look at the history and foundation of this philosophy of determinism. Many of the great thinkers throughout history have pondered the question of free will, starting at least as early as the 5th century BC. Philosophers like Aristotle, Democritus, Plato, Epicurus, Thomas Hobbes, René Descartes, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Friedrich Nietzsche, Augustine, Aquinas, Karl Popper, P.F. Strawson, Daniel Dennett, and B.F. Skinner, to name a few, and some of the great scientists like Max Born, Werner Heisenberg, Niels Bohr, Albert Einstein, Max Planck, Arthur Stanley Eddington, Charles Eccles, and Henry Margenau have all made contributions to the debate. Why are so many great minds spending time on this question of free will? I think it is because the answer to this question is fundamental to who we are as humans. Why would we punish people for crimes if they couldn't help themselves? Why would we give someone the Nobel Peace Prize if they had no control over their actions? How could we have a purpose in life if we are just accidental products of non-thinking physical forces? Are we any more valuable than an insect if our notion of the value of human life arises from an accidental arrangement of atoms in our brains? I believe that we are free to make decisions. I acknowledge that we are heavily influenced by our environment and our past experiences, but we have some degree of freedom that makes us responsible for our actions and our words. Surveys indicate that the great majority of people believe they are free in their decision-making, somewhere around 80% of us. And most of those who believe in determinism say that they feel free to make the decisions they think best, although they believe this feeling is an illusion. But nevertheless, almost all of the people on earth are being informed by their senses that they have free will, whether they believe it or not. That many witnesses would make a very powerful case in a court of law. Mr. Mason, let me get this correct. Do you seriously intend to call 8 billion witnesses?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Objection. Your Honor, once again, Mr. Mason is demonstrating his characteristic courtroom pyrotechnics.
Don't we have a great deal of trust in our senses? I know that people sometimes experience delusions and hallucinations, but those happen for the most part when they are under the influence of drugs and alcohol or experiencing an illness of some kind. Think how chaotic driving would be if our senses were causing us to have constant delusions. We wouldn't be able to leave our homes because of the huge number of accidents. But for the most part, traffic moves along smoothly and in an organized manner, testifying to the reliability of our senses. But determinists say that we are living in a constant state of delusion all the days of our lives. I, for one, am going to use my freedom to reject that notion. If I am wrong and Mr. Harris and the determinists turn out to be right, then I couldn't be blamed for having the wrong opinion, could I? The laws of physics and the arrangement of atoms in my brain would be responsible for my rejection of determinism. I would have no choice in the matter. Wouldn't this be a pathetic world if that were true? Wouldn't life be absurd if we were all a bunch of stringed puppets speaking whatever thoughts the cosmos accidentally put into our brains? Mr. Harris refers to experiments carried out on the brain to back up his case for determinism. Scientists have observed electrical activity in the brain when people are making simple decisions, noting that this electrical activity starts a split second before the person is aware of what decision he or she has made. Mr. Harris infers from this that a physical state in the brain is responsible for making the decision before the person is aware of what decision he or she has made. But do we know enough about the brain to make those kinds of conclusions? Rachel Tompa, writing for the Allen Institute of Brain Science, says, "Scientists have known for centuries that the brain is the seat of human thought, but we're still in the dark about how it works." Neurobiologist Lu Chen, PhD of Stanford University, states, "We know very little about the brain. We know about connections, but we don't know how information is processed." An article written for the Department of Neuroscience at the University of Copenhagen says, "Neuroscientists have not yet generated a theory explaining how brains work. At this point, we are like children with a computer. They know that when they push certain buttons, certain things will happen, but they don't have the foggiest notion of how it happens or what is taking place inside the computer. Another reason I reject determinism is the fact that determinists contradict themselves. I believe that it is impossible to consistently hold the deterministic philosophy in all areas of our lives. This is true for Mr. Harris as well. In the first chapter of his book, Free Will, he tells the story of two men who break into the home of a doctor who had a wife and two daughters. The two men beat the doctor senseless and raped, tortured, robbed, and murdered the wife and two girls. Mr. Harris states that these two men could not help themselves. They were not responsible for these terrible actions, Mr. Harris says. As sickening as I find their behavior, I have to admit that if I were to trade places with one of these men, Adam for Adam, I would be him. There is no extra part of me that could decide to see the world differently or to resist the impulse to victimize other people. But Mr. Harris has written another book, which is titled The End of Faith. The thesis of this book is that religious belief is harmful and even dangerous for the future of humanity. He is arguing that we need to change our thinking in this area, that religious faith is a misuse of our minds, as if he believed we had control over our thinking. Both of these things can't be true at the same time. Either we have no control over our thinking, as described in Free Will, or we have the ability to examine the evidence and change our thinking, as described in The End of Faith. If we have this ability to examine the evidence and change our thinking, then we have free will. Mr. Harris might argue that as he persuades people to give up their religious faith, he is pulling on their puppet strings to cause them to change their behavior. But he has already said that he too is a puppet whose strings are being pulled by natural forces. This gives us the ludicrous image of a stringed puppet pulling the strings of another stringed puppet. Ultimately, the impersonal forces of nature would be responsible for whatever happens, according to this theory. In his book, The End of Faith, Mr. Harris worries that Muslim radicals may someday get hold of nuclear weapons and kill millions of people. If that were to happen, according to his theory of free will, it would be the result of the impersonal, random, physical forces of nature putting those thoughts into the minds of those people. There is nothing any of us could do to stop it unless those same forces accidentally put the idea of stopping the destruction into the minds of other people. Whatever happened would be a matter of luck. The impersonal forces of nature don't care whether the human race lives or ceases to exist. Okay, enough of this gloom and doom. The evidence doesn't support the philosophy of determinism. The overwhelming testimony of humanity is that we are free. And the experts on brain science tell us that they know next to nothing about how the brain works, so we can't use their research to support determinism. The entire philosophy of determinism is built on the faith-based belief that physical matter and the various forces that accompany it make up all of reality. But when I look at the enormous universe that has been revealed to us by the Hubble and Webb telescopes, I think it would be very arrogant for us to say that we know all of reality. It seems very reasonable to think there might be an important part of reality that science knows nothing about. Around 86% of Americans believe that people have a soul or spirit in addition to a body. I am a Christian, and the Bible teaches that each of us has a spirit given to us by God. Jesus taught that spirits are not flesh and bone. In other words, they are not physical. He taught that when the body dies, the spirit continues to live, that it retains the memories of the life in the body, that it experiences emotions, and that it has thoughts. Jesus said that the spirit is the most valuable thing you possess. It is the essence of who you are. If all of this is true, it would explain how we could have freedom of will. If our spirits are non-physical, they would not be controlled by physical forces. I admit that this is a matter of faith, but all of us are forced to put our faith in something that can't be proven by science. To me personally, the evidence points to the truth of the biblical explanation of who and what we are. Each of us must decide if we will go through life thinking we are meaningless puppets, or that we can make decisions and choose which direction our lives will go. Choosing freedom makes the most sense to me. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. We hope to see you again on the next one.